Do you think what is happening to Steenhuisen now in Parliament is a show that cadre deployment does exist even in the Democratic Alliance?
Yeah, most certainly. I mean, I think political officers are different from the question of the administration. But certainly, I think there's only difference between the DA and the ANC is that DA hasn't had the same opportunity. If you look no further than here in the city of Tshwane, the very reason why we are here today electing a new mayor is because the DA has gone about governing the city in a way which, quite frankly, is no better than the ANC's track record in the city. And that's why we see the option of a third way being demonstrated to not just the residents of Tshwane, but Gauteng and more broadly, to be a very important option for people to see this doesn't have to be a binary choice. There can be a third option.
Is the GNU making your job as the vanguard of society very difficult, stating particularly in Parliament where the EFF is seen championing the code of ethics, where Steenhuisen has been found wanting, where he employed people who are not par with the positions, unqualified people, and people are saying it is of course contrary to what they say when they speak about cadre deployment. And is it difficult for ANC to hold DA accountable, especially because you are now GNU partners?
First of all, I don't think I would speak about what is happening in Parliament. I'm a provincial leader. I can only speak about what's happening in legislature. However, I don't think the ANC will find it difficult to respond or to engage the Democratic Alliance. We have done it here in Tshwane. And we got that mandate from our national leadership. So,
in your statement, of course, you mentioned that the minister lied following a question which you had raised if he had deviated in his appointment, and he responded to the negative to that. He's been asked about this by one publication, it's The Citizen, I believe, where he has said the EFF is wrong. There was no deviation, and there are no staff appointed to my office who do not possess the required qualifications. What do you say to that?
I think it's a tragedy, and continues to you, Thabo, and continues to the viewers. It's a tragedy of the lack of education that we've always lamented on with John Steenhuisen, and it began in the answering of this question. And it should be a lesson to the youth of South Africa of the importance of education and comprehension, because when he made that answer, he didn't comprehend the consequences that would come after that. Because John Steenhuisen appointed Annette Steyn as his special advisor, and there's a track record of her representing herself as a special advisor on numerous platforms on behalf of the Department of Agriculture. There's a track record of him saying to the public in numerous publications that he has appointed her, or she has voluntarily represented herself to him as his special advisor. And she's been doing work in that capacity, using that title, representing the government of South Africa on numerous platforms as a special advisor to the Minister of Agriculture, even though she does not possess the necessary level 7 of NQF, which is required to hold that post. And Steenhuisen only sought to get the deviation for her appointment after months of her having occupying and representing herself as a special advisor to a minister of this country. So a minister is not John Steenhuisen. It's an office that belongs to the state, that represents government. And this unqualified individual has been representing the people of South Africa in that capacity. And the track record of that, we've lodged that complaint with the registrar of the Ethics Committee. So the lack of Steenhuisen's comprehension and education should not be made a tragedy of ours. He doesn't understand what he has said. He doesn't understand what he's continuing to say. He's continuing to dig a hole for himself. Yes. And that is to our benefit as an opposition that's holding him accountable.
So the Directive on Human Resource Management and Development for the Public Service Professionalization, Volume 1, details the following, that Clause 1.14 provides that the inherent requirements for appointment into a senior management service post, a chief director or director, qualification at NQF level 7, recognized by SAQA. The Clause 1.15 stipulates that the minimum years of experience for entry into such positions, excluding those who are specialists, as follows: level 13, 5 years, level 14, 5 years, level 15, 8 years. Of the names that you are putting there on your release, what are the qualifications of those who are there, except for Annette Steyn, who I know has been a member of parliament since 2009?
Their qualifications is DA membership cards and friendship with John Steenhuisen. None of them meet the requisite educational requirements at all. Even the Roman cabinet, who's currently the chief of staff of John Steenhuisen, even though he's asked him to resign, he continues to occupy that role. There's some mischievous understanding of whether he completed his law degree or not. It's not clear. And Steenhuisen now wants to weaponize that uncertainty around cabinet's qualifications as a reason to use HR processes to kick him out. But he appointed him as the chief of staff, not being certain whether he had the qualification or not because he was his friend. So this shows you that Steenhuisen doesn't utilize meritocracy. The Democratic Alliance doesn't utilize meritocracy as a basis of appointment. While there's thousands of unemployed graduates who hold NQF level 7, which is the equivalent of a bachelor's degree here in South Africa, the DA has seen no value in all of those graduates and has appointed lily white-skinned, underqualified individuals simply because they hold DA membership and they have a relationship with John Steenhuisen. The most painful case must be the one of Roman Kaepernick, a right-wing racist podcaster who's refusing to resign. And as a result, he's not being given any responsibilities by Steenhuisen in that office, but he's making a 6-figure salary. This Annette Steyn, there's pictures of her with John Steenhuisen and the Minister of Public Works, Dean McPherson, where McPherson refers to her as a special advisor to the Department of Agriculture. Annette Steyn has an access, which requires security level clearances, to Department of Agriculture's records, to Department of Agriculture's access to premises, speaking on behalf of us as a nation, while she doesn't have these qualifications. That is a magnitude, and it's tantamount to treason, what Steenhuisen has done. So he's not only breached his oath of office by lying in response of the question, which I asked him as to whether he's appointed for individuals who are underqualified, he's also placed the security of South Africa at risk because agriculture is at the center of food security in South Africa, and some matriculate lady who was a DA MP has been having access to all of this. And that is why we're so outraged as the EFF, and we're going to be relentless. So whether Steenhuisen comprehends the trouble he's in or not is none of our concern. We're not the ones who forced him to not go to school. We're going to continue to hold him accountable.
So except for this directive that has been now in place since, I think, if not July, or maybe a little bit earlier than that.
April, yeah.
Yeah. It's always been, up until this point, the prerogative of ministers and deputy ministers to appoint people to their office. It seems if they are not holding a senior position, they may be allowed to be in that office.
It shouldn't be. So the provisions that have been put in place since April 2024, if I'm not mistaken, were put there because we need to professionalize the state. So for too long, and ironically, the DA has been the most hypocritical advocate of this. Cadre deployment that lacks meritocracy, lacks qualification and quality has been at the forefront of deployment into the bureaucracy of the South African government and state. So people have been selected on the basis of the loyalty to their principles at a political level. So in order to professionalize services, professionalize departments in South Africa to ensure there's efficiency and quality of services, there's been these regulations that have been put into place. And the DA, which has been dragging the ANC hither and thither for cadre deployment, has been in support of this professionalization. But now that they occupy seats of power, they are practicing cadre deployment and the shallowest, crudest, most disgusting type of it, where they appoint individuals. A person who was a member of parliament of the DA who's out of a job is made a special advisor even though she doesn't qualify. She's presented as an expert on agriculture. If she's an expert on agriculture, why is she not operating in that sector at a technical level? What technical advice can she give to the transformation of the agricultural sector and land reform in South Africa when she doesn't even have a post-matric qualification? So these types of people are paid at deployment in its crudest form, which is perpetuated by the DA. So those stipulations and the removal of that prerogative for ministers to appoint whoever they like was to professionalize the state. And the DA is deprofessionalizing the state and promoting white mediocrity at the behest of a white mediocre John Steenhuisen. So I think we're also being unfair on John Steenhuisen to expect him to appoint people who have more qualifications than him. Perhaps his ego is too small. Perhaps his mind is too fragile and he fears being outshined by appointing people who hold post-matric qualifications, who are going to show that they're more competent to be a minister than he is. That's why he's appointing people who are his peers in terms of education and thinking.
Yeah. Since the ANC study group had raised this a month ago, Sharon Davids criticizing Steenhuisen for recommending individuals lacking qualifications and relevant experience. Why do you think that nothing was done about it?
Look, I don't think the ANC has got the moral or ethical fortitude to hold the Democratic Alliance accountable for anything. We've seen today how the Secretary General of the ANC operates on the instruction of Helen Zille. So while the DA is tearing them apart, are able to criticize their ministers like Thembi Simelane, criticize their premiers like Panyaza Lesufi, the ANC has been turned into a lapdog that is just compliant. I don't foresee us seeing an ANC that is able to confront the Democratic Alliance beyond mere posturing in interviews. Tomorrow there's going to be an election of a mayor in the city of Tshwane. Perhaps they'll try to redeem some level of moral or African history and tradition that they used to hold by defying the threat of Helen Zille. But the African National Congress doesn't have the capacity to follow through on holding the Democratic Alliance accountable because they're beholden to it. Without the Democratic Alliance, Cyril Ramaphosa would not be president. He'd be held accountable for Phala Farm. So they lack the moral fortitude to be able to stand up to the DA, which is why I think the EFF is the one that's been able to bring this to the fore in a much stronger manner.
With regards to this now, you're saying in 7 days he needs to respond to the Ethics Committee. What is it that he needs to present to the Ethics Committee?
He must counter the evidence that we have submitted and are still going to submit to the registrar of the Ethics Committee, which shows a track record of individuals being recognized as staff. Annette Steyn, number one, recognized as a special advisor on platforms that relate to agricultural transformation, reform, and production, on platforms where she's been visiting alongside other DA ministers and being referred to as a special advisor, on platforms where farmers, the person called Vessel, there's a publication where he says that he's happy that Annette Steyn has been appointed as a special advisor as well. So there's various and numerous stakeholders in South Africa that can and have confirmed that Annette Steyn, an underqualified individual, is appointed as a special advisor of Steenhuisen. Roman Cabinet is still a chief of staff, even though we have no idea whether he's qualified or not. We have no idea whether he's doing any work or not because he's been asked to resign, but he's making a 6-figure salary as we sit here. And the other 4 individuals, one of whom is a spokesperson of John Steenhuisen of the Democratic Alliance, whom we were trying to appoint as well. We will find that he has been having access to the records and the Department of Agriculture's classified information in order to boost Steenhuisen's communications output as a minister. So a lot is still going to be uncovered. But of course, when we refer a matter to the Ethics Committee, it will also have an investigative capacity and a capacity to summon individuals to confirm or deny whether they have been part and parcel of this nefarious scheme of Steenhuisen of jobs for pals and cadre deployment. So the process is going to be ongoing. We're not going to relent. And his lack of understanding of the seriousness of this situation is going to be his own downfall.
A violation of this nature of the Code of Ethics and Constitution, you say. What could possibly be the result of that?
Look, unfortunately, the ethics, the sanctions of the Ethics Committee can be rather slap on the wrist. It could be fined, it could be asked to apologize to the people of South Africa, but we are going to seek the harshest of sanctions, which is the removal as a minister and possibly loss of seat as a member of parliament as well. We've already called on Cyril Ramaphosa. If he has any backbone and has an ability to stand up to the Democratic Alliance, which has been telling him who to put where and who to remove as they please, to remove him as a Minister of Agriculture. There's no value that he's adding in that department. He's only brought scandal since his appointment. He appointed a right-wing podcaster who's a racist and a homophobe. He's been trying to appoint underqualified people. The most out of all of the requests for deviation came from him, and they are all members of the DA who have worked for the DA in some capacity in the past. So there's nothing he's brought to this department besides disrepute. So we've asked Ramaphosa to stand up for himself, stand up for the Constitution of South Africa, and remove him. If he fails to do so, we'll pursue that process through the Ethics Committee, and that is a sanction that is part and parcel of those provisions. And he's broken enough provisions for that to be possible and applicable. And we'll see how far we can go with that, and we'll see whether this so-called government of national unity will prioritize cadre deployment of John Steenhuisen or the Constitution of South Africa.